Support for the show comes from Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to building a more equitable, democratic, and prosperous North Carolina.
You can learn more about their vision and values at carolinaforward.org.
North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray. Well, hey, man.
Hello, hello.
We're here in the studio again.
Yes, and we have a fantastic guest. I'm super excited.
Yeah, so how's your week been?
Week has been really good. I don't know about you, but like the cicadas are out in force, and I am loving it.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. Like I was walking in the woods down along the Hall River, and every like 10 feet, I was just getting like kamikaze by a cicada. They're just popping around the woods.
You put the exoskeleton in your pocket. And
I just hold them. I like picking them up. They're gentle giants. They can't bite you, you know?
I guess my 5-year-old is terrified of them.
I mean, they're gnarly looking things, but again, they all they can do is crawl on you.
Fair enough.
So, I'm a fan.
Well, today we have a very special guest. I'm really excited about this. We have the honor of hosting Satana Deberry, District Attorney for Durham County. Satana brings a wealth of legal experience to the DA's office, as well as a deep commitment to justice reform. From her roots as a criminal defense attorney in her hometown of Hamlet, North Carolina, to her tenure as General Counsel of the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, her leadership as executive director for a nonprofit North Carolina Housing Coalition, Satana has made a career for fighting for more than just an equitable North Carolina. Well, an equitable North Carolina. Satana has been the recipient of many awards, including the North Carolina Justice Center's 2020 Defender of Justice Award. She has a Duke Law Alumni Association's 2020 Charles Murphy Award for civic service. And in 2020, she also has the Attorney General Josh Steins who honored her with the Dogwood Award in recognition of her devoted service to the people of Durham. Satana's academic achievements are also equally as impressive. She has a bachelor's degree in sociology from Princeton. She got her law degree from Duke University, and she also has a master in business administration from Duke University. So yet again, we have another...
I know, a total overachiever. I feel like I'm such a loser. All these guests we have.
our resumes just don't do it. And, you know, the other thing that is really cool, she's a mom. So she's able to do all this and be a mom. So, Satana, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Yes. Yeah, and you really went above and beyond to get to us tonight. You braved I-40, I-85 rush hour traffic to be here, so we are doubly grateful.
Yeah, and 2 wrecks.
And 2 wrecks.
So I hope everybody's okay.
So thank you. You know, right now you're the Durham County DA. I think many of our listeners who aren't in Durham County, and maybe even listening outside of North Carolina, we do have a few of those. I had a friend today text me from France, actually, and say, like the podcast.
Oh, perfect.
Lots of folks may know of the Durham County District Attorney's Office from various high-profile cases. Like I'm thinking The Staircase, right? Like the Netflix, right? So could you talk a little bit about what are some things people need to know beyond what they might read and, you know, the clickbait and on Netflix? Like bring us into the office itself and, you know, what is its role? What does a day on the job look like?
Sure. So, yeah, most people know the Durham County District Attorney from The Staircase or, unfortunately, from the Duke lacrosse case.
Right. Mm-hmm.
There have been several high-profile issues that have happened in Durham. Durham likes to say that it punches above its weight, and it certainly punches above its weight in controversy as well. But the district attorney's office in North Carolina and in most of the United States prosecutes the criminal statutes of that state. So in North Carolina, the district attorney determines what cases go to court. Law enforcement charges in North Carolina. So if you get pulled over for something or you get arrested for something, that's law enforcement. Those cases are then transferred to the district attorney. The district attorney, as a criminal prosecutor, then makes a determination if those cases should go to court, and if they do go to court, what decisions are made in those cases. district attorney's office also then tries those cases. They offer plea bargains. They can divert cases. They can dismiss cases. There's a range of things that the district attorney can do. But really the way that I see it is that it is a balancing of public safety versus who are we trying to be as a community? Are we a community of second and third chances for people? Are we a community where we use the criminal legal system to substitute for social services or the things that we need to be providing our people? Or are we using it to provide accountability when people do break the law, and certainly when people commit violent crime against each other?
You guys have a lot of power, and I feel like in deciding what cases are brought to trial, you're almost like a moral weather vane for a community in a sense, kind of figuring out what I mean, I guess part of it's evidence-based. What do we have enough evidence to pursue, but also what do we care about pursuing? I'm curious, this is a more technical question. What is the difference between an indictment and being charged with something? Because I feel like in the past year or so, in the news is always indictment this, indictment that, somebody's being charged. Are they synonymous, or
they are synonymous. Essentially, in North Carolina, you are indicted. You go in front of a grand jury for a felony case. You're charged with a felony. That case then goes to a grand jury. The grand jury decides if there is probable cause to proceed.
Gotcha.
And then if they hand back an indictment, then the district attorney's office, the prosecutor's office, then proceeds with that case.
So the grand jury, in a sense, is kind of just a listening group, almost, or a focus group to figure out, does this pass muster? Is this something worth entering the courtroom as a case?
Absolutely. It is many of you, when you hear of jury duty, that is 12 people in a box. That is also actually called the petit jury. So it is the small jury.
Okay.
Learn something new.
And the grand jury is the big jury.
That was actually my next question. Is like, what makes it grand?
So the grand jury is more people than that, and they sit in Durham County. We have grand jury twice a month, and in some places the prosecutor's office presents to the grand jury. In North Carolina, we don't present. Law enforcement presents, and they take those felony cases to the grand jury. They present them to the grand jury. Those citizens who are sitting on that grand jury then make a determination if there's probable cause to go forward.
And one more follow up, and then we'll move on to something else. But I from my limited understanding, when I was like a teenager, I was really into. I wanted to be a lawyer. That did not pan out
because of Batman and Harvey Dent as the DA for Gotham City.
Well, it was my understanding that if you were a lawyer, you could not get convicted of a crime. It's kind of like, just. How do you arrest the person who is the lawyer, right? Who is the law? That was part of my get rich slow scheme. That
was a really get rich slow scheme.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. There are many lawyers in prison.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
No, I got involved with Alamance County Teen Court, which was a fantastic diversion program we had for nonviolent first-time juvenile offenders. They would go through the teen court process, and they would have a case that was processed in a court of law, but the case was handled by peers, by teen volunteers, and it was ultimately overseen. A judge would preside, a local judge. In fact, we had some other attorneys, like Larry Brown, who's now a district court judge. That's how I met Larry, was back in my teen court days, and Jim Roberson. And anyway, and that was a great introduction to the legal system. I subsequently did not pursue it as a career, but I've always been interested in law, and I'm curious, can you talk about when it comes to the DA, like it is an elected office, and one thing that I think I see a lot when I hear about people running for that office is throwing out like a conviction rate, or parading that around as if like whoever gets the highest conviction rate is therefore most qualified to be the DA. Can you speak a little bit about why is that? I don't know. Why is that important? What are your thoughts on that?
Or is that just a misconception?
Or is that a misconception? Is that something that's on TV?
That is a misconception, at least from my point of view. The district attorney is, like you said, it's a very powerful position. And historically, in any community, there are very few lawyers, so there are very few people who can run for that. I know people think there are lawyers everywhere, and certainly there are more lawyers than there used to be, but there aren't really. It's a very small number of people who are qualified or want to be the district attorney.
Because you're the bad guy.
Or the good guy, depending on who you talk to.
Right.
Right? And there are 2,200 elected prosecutors in the United States. 80% of those are white guys. Less than 2% are women of color. And so, and that position tends to not turn over a lot. So it is one of those jobs that if you get it, people get to keep it for a very long time. And as Americans, we are really fascinated with crime. You guys are doing a podcast. You know that the most successful podcasts out there are true crime ones.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right? We all grew up on a steady diet of Law and Order and CSI and these procedurals. And so conviction rate is something that sounds good and is really hard to prove. Right? And so the DA can say, oh, I got 100% conviction rate. But what does that mean? Does that mean that everybody who comes before you, every case that you bring to a court, somebody is guilty? I mean, if that was baseball, you'd be in the Hall of Fame your rookie season.
Right.
If you're batting 1,000 like that, right? Nothing in this world is perfect. And so what we really want to be focused on in my office is accountability for the most serious and violent crimes, and then that we can divert from court. So things like to teen court or to mental health court or drug court, those issues that are not public safety issues, but issues in which somebody's broken some type of social contract with us, right? But we don't want to be putting people in prison just because they sleep outside or they have a substance abuse issue. We want to be focused on people who we want to be focused on the kind of the interpersonal stuff, right? People who hurt other people.
Well, I guess that's really, it leads us into our next question. You've been known to be a progressive DA. And I think a lot of times when we hear in this world of politicalness, when people say progressive or liberal, they think it's going to be like soft on crime. And you've been a big proponent for justice reform. What does that look like to you, and how can you use the office of a DA to do justice reform? Because me, just being an average person who just grew up on Law and Order, if you steal money or if you speed, this is the crime, this is the sentence, this is what you get. And you're one of the first in the country to lead a restorative justice practice with a felony murder case. And so, can you just explain a little bit of what you think justice reform looks like, and how can a DA help this?
So I have been of late not saying I'm a progressive as much as I just do what makes sense. Okay. Because we all live, things are very cut and dry on television.
Yes.
Right? In Law and Order, you already know within the first 20 minutes who did it. Because that is the person that you recognize, right? That's the guest star whose face you recognize. Right. But everything always lines up, and they go from criminal act to conviction in 42 minutes or less, right?
Yeah, it's that simple, right?
It's that simple. Except we all know that in our lives we do not live lives that are that simple. That there's lots of nuance to these things. And one of the things that we know about crime in the United States is that we focus very much on what happens in Black and brown communities. We focus very much on what happens in low-income communities, and not so much on other forms of crime. One of the things I've been saying lately is people want to talk about gun violence, which is a real issue and is a real concern. And there is massive wage theft also going on in my community. Absolutely. There we live here in the Triangle, and I don't know, is Burlington the Triangle, the Triad?
We claim both, I think.
You think you're both?
We're able to do it.
Wherever it is, we are living in one of the fastest growing places in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Every corner you turn around, there's construction happening. Every corner you turn around, there is theft from those people. Do I prosecute that? Almost never.
Wow.
However, if you're a young black man carrying a gun in a low-income community, I will probably prosecute you more than once. And so for me, reform is about talking about what is really happening and how we can address the things that are, what crime really looks like, what are the drivers of crime in the community, how do we get to the root causes of those, acknowledging that there are root causes,
Right.
that it's not just somebody is evil and is out there perpetrating crime, but that we are sometimes creating situations in which we create generational poverty that results in violence. Everywhere in the world where people are desperately poor, there's violence. And we need to talk about that. We need to talk about the communities we live in and how we foster that. We need to talk about what we can do to have a fairer and more equitable society. And I think the DA has to be in that conversation. Historically, the DA has been not a part, but a part, right? Separated from that conversation.
Yeah, that's one of the things. When I was trying to do my homework on you, I watched a town hall right after you first got elected. And it was just really cool to see, because I haven't witnessed it here. And I'm sure a lot of other communities haven't witnessed it. But you just get elected, you hold a town hall, and just the transparency and the accessibility to just answer judicial questions. You know, you explain that our justice system is a blunt object. It's just really just there. And to me, that's how I felt, right? This is it. I'm going to get hit with this bat, and there's no maneuvering around. But it also is everything that you just said. It can't just fall on your office, right? It has to fall on the community and you not being a part, and not you specifically, but DAs, not being a part, but being a part of that conversation. So the community can educate themselves on how to better and help give you answers of what's happening in the community, because it's hard to be everywhere all the time.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned I was a mom. You know, I live in Durham County. My kids went to Durham Public Schools. I go grocery shopping in Durham County. So what happens in that community is very important to me. Right? I just had a new grandbaby who's going to grow up in that community.
What do they call you?
I don't know. He's 12 days old.
Gotcha. So he's thinking, he's working on it.
He's working on it. Whatever he's going to, I'm going to let him pick whatever he
You're not
calls
going to
for
choose
me.
it for him?
I'm not going to choose it
All
for
right.
him. It's always better when they choose.
Yeah,
They
no,
come
for
up with
sure.
something cool, right? They call you something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of what my mama tried to do. But then as a parent, you know, and they kind of came up with some type of idea from it. But when grandma is coming over, I want to call you something.
You got to call her something, right? Yeah.
So they're not going to be ready.
Yeah,
for
we've
it.
already decided my mom's going to be nanograms, and my dad is going to be Peepaw, which he hates. And that's why we picked it. I mean, why would we? No.
I know, we just kind of went on a tangent there, but
That's right. That's going to be on the back porch part.
There we go.
that's right.
But
it humanizes you.
But it is important, at least to me, it is important to be part of the community. In most communities, people could not tell you who their DA was. In fact, there are situations where there are people standing in front of the judge pleading to something in trial. They couldn't tell you who the elected district attorney was. And it has been important for me that the people in my community know essentially who to blame, or because that's what they do, or who to go to. And that I am the person that they go to, irrespective of who's working in my office, is my face, and they know that they can come to me to complain, to congratulate, to do whatever it is. But there is a direct line to somebody who has the actual authority to make things happen.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to, I guess, my misspeaking when I said you're the bad guy and you're like, or the good guy. And even just now, right? People are like, they want to blame the DA. And yeah, I agree. I think that is justice reform, where the DA is not the bad guy necessarily. I'm the person that can help, and you can talk to.
The DA is a leader.
Yes,
is a community leader, right? Yeah,
that's right.
And the DA we only get involved as a prosecutor once bad things have happened.
Right.
How great would it be if we prevented bad things from happening?
Awesome.
Right? And we all live in communities in which there are literally hundreds of people engaged in keeping bad things from happening every day. Right? Nobody wants to live in a place where young men get shot on the street. Right? They don't want to live in a place where there are innocent victims who get caught in crossfire, or people who die in car accidents from speeding, or people who are driving while impaired. We all want to feel safe, and that's not just those of us who have great resumes and live in nice houses and in neighborhoods that we think are safe. That is literally everybody.
I'm curious to talk about the concept of restorative justice, because I think in the society, I mean, you mentioned how we're kind of obsessed with crime, and crime is often invoked with punishment, crime and punishment. And I think our conception of justice from an early age, for many of us, justice comes with this notion of punishment. It's punitive, right? So like, when you're 5 years old and you mouth off to the kindergarten teacher, you're punished. You get put in timeout because you were a bad kid or something like that. And now we're learning more about alternatives, like restorative justice. Could you talk about what is restorative justice? I think many of our listeners, this will be the first time they've heard that phrase.
Sure. Yeah, and it's interesting too, because we live in a time where we talk a lot about Christian values, but we only talk about the punitive nature of that, right? We talk about a God who is
the wrath,
who carries a sword,
right? That's right.
And fire, right? And we don't talk about the redemptive nature, right, of justice. Now, one, there's no justice in the criminal legal system. Let's be clear about that. Justice would be if you were a victim of a crime, that you were restored to where you had been before that. But what we know is that does not happen. We know that people die, people are traumatized. But what we also know is that victims, even when the process goes, quote unquote, perfectly in the criminal legal system, they do not feel whole. And often victims want to know, why did you do this to me? Why did you choose me? And in lots of culture and lots of our history as human beings, there have been practices in which people were able to get that answer. Our modern criminal justice system really very much separates the person who committed the crime from the person who was the victim of the crime. They almost never talk through the process, right? There's the victims over here with the prosecutor, the defendants over there with their attorney. Both sides are advising the other not to speak to each other. And then it's over. And one of the things that we hear constantly, especially in situations where someone has died, that the family feels like the criminal justice process is them getting justice for their family member. And then when it's over, it's hollow. And so what restorative justice does is it is not so much a sentence. I think people think of it sometimes as diversion from court or dismissal. It is not that. It is the opportunity to heal a harm, to address the harm, and to offer restoration to the person that you've harmed. And it's victim-led, which literally nothing in the criminal justice system is victim-led. It is all prosecutor-led. Right. I make all the decisions about what happens. The victim doesn't like it. I sympathize with that. We try to be trauma-informed. At the end of the day,
it's your call.
It's my call. Restorative justice allows them to say, this is what I need. And then it allows the person who has committed the harm, who often is not somebody who can recognize in the moment the harm that they've caused, but over time goes, my God, what have I done? I would like to offer something.
And what is that offering?
It depends. It depends on what the victim, if the victim's family wants to enter into a restorative process. We have a partner in Durham, Restorative Justice Durham, that has trained dozens, perhaps hundreds of people now in Durham to do this, and we can do it from small things up to, we have done a murder, and they put together a repair agreement. They meet with us. The victim meets over time with their circle of people to develop what they want, and assuming that the defendant is willing to participate, they also meet with a circle of people and make an offering, and they come together with a repair agreement, and the defendant agrees to do those things that the victim has asked for.
And then is it ultimately up to the judge to say, okay, this worked?
So often restorative justice happens outside of the court. The court doesn't get involved at all. We try not to get involved. What we generally do is, as the prosecutor, is we say we will slow down our case. If what a victim wants is to enter into restorative justice, we'll slow down our case. And we will hold it until you have come to some agreement. And then we generally make that agreement part of whatever the sentence is going to be. And sometimes that affects the sentence. Sometimes it doesn't. In the murder case in which we used restorative justice, or which the family used restorative justice, it was a young man who was charged with murdering his father. Mm-hmm. He did it. He fully accepted responsibility for it. And he thought he was going to be outcast from his family forever for it. And he had members of his family who felt like he had an uncle who's a preacher, and he said he was getting up in the pulpit every Sunday and preaching about love and mercy. And here he had a nephew that, and long story short, was the young man had been beaten by his father, and he just had enough. And the family knew it, and they felt some responsibility to him for having known it and left him in that situation. Wow. And so it took a while, and it's a much more complicated story than that. I encourage people to, there's a podcast about it in The Guardian, and there's an article. And
we'll link it. I read it, and it is fantastic. Like, it is. It was just, I was like, holy shit. Like this, just the crime itself, the act, right, was like, wow. And then just the whole process through it. And so I guess that leads to the question that I just asked. The family agreed to it. He had already spent 4 years or so in jail.
6 years, yeah.
6 years in jail. Could the judge have said, you know what, no?
Yes. The judge could have said no, but again, we didn't, we talked the whole time.
Okay.
And
there it goes again, man. Communication
is key, right?
Yeah.
In literally every field of human endeavor.
Yeah. That's right. So
or human relationship,
we're
talking to each
on,
other matters.
On some time here, but I want to ask one final question, and this question actually comes from a good friend of the Holler, Ricky Hurtado. And he told me he ran into you a couple weeks ago.
Wait, Ricky listens to this?
He does. Ricky listens to this. So his question, Black women are the backbone of the movement to improve all of our communities, but there continues to be barriers that make it hard for women of color to break through in the political realm. And you kind of spoke about it earlier.
2%? Is that right? 2% of DAs are women of color?
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%.
And you've had your successes and your setbacks. So he asked, how do we continue to get better at making sure our politics represent all of the community?
And this is a whole podcast in and of itself.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, you can damn Ricky for that.
Yeah, the way that we met was I was running for Attorney General, And we were in the race like 90 days. It wasn't long, but one of the issues I had was raising money. It's very difficult as a black woman in politics to raise money. But I think in America, black women are the canaries in the coal mine. And by that I mean that any bad thing that's going to happen, it happens to us first. And you can see how it will go for other people if we don't change. And black women are also the people who most believe in the promise of America,
That's
right?
right.
Like, even though we're the canaries in the coal mine, we are the ones who still believe in the promise of education. You talked about my education. I'm from Hamlet, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Richmond County?
Richmond County.
Right there on the line. I mean, you could walk to South Carolina from Hamlet.
And from my parents' backyard,
really?
I could walk to South Carolina. It was not far.
We're lucky to have you on our side of the line.
I am very glad to, I used to say growing up, the one saving grace I had was I did not grow up in South Carolina. But, I went from Hamlet to Princeton because I believe that education matters.
Did your parents believe?
Well, my parents went to college. And so I was lucky in that sense. My parents went to college. So I am, I was third generation college graduate, but I also grew up in the community in which my family was enslaved. So my mother's mother's mother, right, were enslaved in that same community. But they could see, I honestly believe that they could see me. Right? They could see that there was something possible for me. And I think that's what we need to hear, and that's what we need black women for, because, like, if I believe in me, think what I believe you can accomplish, right? With all of this,
but
the
how can
privilege you have.
With knowing that I have a privilege, like what can people like me do? Straight white men.
Quinn, you're hopeless specifically.
I know.
But nobody's hopeless. One of the things that I really believe is that everybody belongs to me. Every kid in my community is my kid. My success is inextricably linked to your success. I need for you to also believe that. Because that's what helps me, is when you see me and you hear me talk and you say, she's got a good idea. I'm going to support that. I'm going to invest in her, whether that's my time, my talent, or my treasure. Right? When I see a black woman leading, I am going to lend my credibility to her credibility, because we still live in a society where that matters.
No doubt.
Where I still have to get kind of the rubber stamp. You talked about the awards that I've won. I still have to get kind of the rubber stamp of a white guy to be effective and move big things, right? And that's what we want to do. Hopefully, as progressives, is we want to move big things. We want big change for people's lives.
That's right. Well, we're right there on time, but we want to do some rapid questions just real quick for you. So, what is one book that everybody should read?
Back to Restorative Justice. Everybody should read. Oh shoot! Now I can't remember it.
Hey, it happens to the best of us.
It's a book by Danielle Sered that everybody in my office has read, and now it's escaping me. So we'll go to another rapid question.
So if we got into
Until We Reckon.
Until We Reckon.
Called Until We Reckon, and it is about the experience of victims in the criminal justice system, and everybody should read that.
And if Daniel and I hopped in your car right now and you were taking us to Starbucks, what's going to come through your speakers as soon as we hop in it?
Probably NPR, but also Drake.
Okay.
He's my problematic fave.
Everybody's got one.
KP likes some Drake. And if you're on a road trip and you pull over to the Buc-ee's or the Sheetz, or the Wawa, what is the snack? What does Satana go in and get?
Hot Cheetos. So stereotypical. But I'm getting hot Cheetos, and I'm also getting, they make these really big Smarties now.
Yep.
And they sell them at the
horse
Sheetz.
pills.
Yeah. Smarties are, from when I was a little kid, they are my absolute favorite candy.
You like candy cigarettes too, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
still
I
around.
did.
I got one. If you weren't in not just the district attorney, but if you weren't a lawyer, if you weren't in your current profession, what would you be doing?
When I first went to college, I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. And it was, you know how they say, what's the book that changed your life? The book that changed my life was Organic Chemistry, Volume 4. And so...
Didn't make it far into that one. Just
Yeah.
introduction. We're good.
Yeah, so had I made it through organic chemistry, I'd love to be a pediatric surgeon. I say my retirement job is going to be being a funeral director. Actually, I really have. I had the honor of sitting with my mother and my grandmother as they passed away, and found it to be instead of being the saddest time in my life, being really the most restorative thing that I've ever experienced, and being there for families is important.
That reminds me, I mean, just like I was in NPR Fresh Air, they had an interview with a death doula.
Yes,
recently.
I heard that.
Really fascinating. Anyway, I know we're on time, so we'll have to kick that can. Madam District Attorney, thank you so much for coming on the Hometown Holler.
You are a bona fide badass.
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
110%.
Man. And hopefully you can stick around for a little back porch talk.
Yep, love it.
Awesome. Well,
Folks-
thanks for coming.
Yeah, folks, thanks for listening. Please remember to hype the Holler. Follow us on our social media. Go to our website. Sign up for Holler Highlights. We now have a weekly mailing list that is a shot glass worth of Tar Heel politics delivered right to your inbox once a week. So please follow us there. And we'll see you guys on the flip side.
Awesome. Thanks.